Yeah. You're listening to Autodesk's Digital Builder Podcast, a show that inspires construction professionals to innovate and use technology to improve how they build our world. I'm Eric Thomas, and I've been working in construction for nearly a decade. And now I have the privilege to sit down with industry trailblazers to hear how they're solving construction's biggest challenges and redefining the future of the built environment. All right, welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. At the end of the second day of Autodesk University, everybody's fired up. You might be able to hear some screaming in the background. I don't know what they're up to, but at least they're having fun, right? Today, I am joined by May Winfield, the Global Director of Commercial, Legal, and Digital Risk at Buro Happold. And today, we're going to be focusing on understanding AI risk for design and make companies. As we, get into this conversation, I think there are a lot of legal risks that folks have seen and maybe not even considered as we start getting more and more into this AI-driven and digital age. May, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you joining me to share your wisdom. How are you feeling? AU Day 2, it's a good day.
It's amazing to be back in Vegas and to meet you in person. I've been listening to Digital Builder for ages. So actually seeing you with a voice attached to a person is quite unique.
I appreciate that. I am a real person and not a deep-faked AI entity, I promise. So thank you for validating that for everybody out there listening, that I am in fact real. But I'm really excited to jump into this conversation, and you have such a great amount of experience and just general enthusiasm for this topic. So I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. At a high level, in what ways are you starting to see artificial intelligence or AI transforming the AEC industry? I know Autodesk has made some of its own announcements in recent days, and I think every company in the history of technology companies in the last 6 months has says, we have AI, and some of that may or may not be very, accurate, but I'd love to hear your take.
I think we have to separate the hype from the reality. And this is the first time that we have enough data to actually probably train AI models. But we hear a lot of words about data's the new currency, data's the new gold. With the thing that people then don't say is how much of the data in the construction industry is validated, accurate, complete. Probably not a lot of it. And therefore you say you have your AI models, how accurate are they going to be? And then what are you going to use them for? I think that's an important starting point in terms of how much it can transform the industry. I would say whilst people are worried about AI coming to take their jobs, going to come and take over the world, probably not going to happen yet. It's more going to augment what we do, enhance what we do. For example, you can use AI to give you options for particular design, and you can take one of those options and develop it yourself, develop content, develop knowledge, ideas, how you present something in a more rational way. I was talking to someone yesterday, and he said he had to go to an event, had to write a bio. So he asked ChatGPT, based on his LinkedIn profile, please prepare a bio for me. And that sort of thing saved him time, small but important. I think where it will transform the industry most and quickest is both in terms of ideation, but also making boring tasks easier and faster. I was reading about Harvard Business School did a study with Boston Consulting Group, and they gave a number of employees access to GPT-4. And they found the people who had access did things 25% faster, but
Wow.
also their output was judged to be 40% better quality. So they still did the output, but they were enhanced in terms of doing it. And I think that's where the transformation will be most.
I love that focus too. And thank you for, reminding everybody we, have a couple more years before Skynet shows up and starts really pulling levers. So, hang in there. AI is here to help, but not, take over just yet, which I think is an important baseline, because there's a lot of misconceptions sometimes about what the value is. But also, as you astutely pointed out, for a long time, the data in our industry was not great, for lack of a better descriptor. And I think a lot of firms are starting to finally understand the importance of data standards and the importance of also telling people why we're capturing data to help them understand the outputs and the changes and the values. Because if you're just capturing just to capture and you've never told anybody why, it's probably harder to get them to say, okay, I'm going to do a better job in making sure that I'm getting clean data and good data. And all of that, of course, as you pointed out, impacts the modeling and all the other great things that we would like to do if that information isn't, accurate or relevant. I'm curious, what are some of the biggest risks that AEC teams face when they are using AI on their projects? So more often than not, we're talking about the positives. And I like to be positive, of course, but I think we really also have to be risk managers in our industry. And I'd like to see where these tools potentially introduce that.
And I think it's a good starting point to point out there are a lot of benefits, and it's about managing the innovation and experimentation with the risks. One thing I've found over the years of specializing in digital is people get excited about the new shiny technology and forget about the risks, or say it's all going to be fine, and then it's not.
Yeah.
And I think with AI, it can be divided into a couple of different categories. One being reliance or accuracy of the output, confidentiality, copyright, personal data, and ethics. And if you look at each of those in turn, say, look at reliance at first, ultimately, a generative AI model is only as good as the data it's trained on. But you don't know what data it's been trained on. Again, going back to, is it complete? Is it accurate? Has it just been scraped from the internet? So some of it's just been made up. If you have an AI result, which you then incorporate into your design or you incorporate into your report, you're still responsible for that. Saying to your client, oh, the AI got it wrong, is like saying the calculator got it wrong. It's not going to help.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real risk. It's more of a risk now, arguably, with the fact generative AI models can recognize photos and images. So someone may upload an image and say, is this connection safe? And the generative AI model says, yes, based on the data I have, it is. And it's not, and something bad happens. The consequences could be serious.
Yeah.
And it's being able to balance that out. I noticed OpenAI is now launching a store. So third-party developers can develop things for the ChatGPT. What if one of those third-party developed apps has an error in it and you don't realize now, or you realize 2 years from now, and you have to redo part of the project? And then lots of fingers get pointed about whose fault it is. Probably won't be able to rely on claiming against the software developer, understandably, because they say, well, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
You blindly relied on it. I think also there's the issue about insurance. So professional indemnity insurance covers negligence. If you knowingly did something which was really reckless and stupid, knowing it could be wrong, our insurer is going to say, well, why should we pay for you doing that? And that's the insurance industry is probably going to have to keep up to date with that as well. So then you look at confidentiality. And I think it's really tempting, and I bet loads of people listening have done this. Upload some data, say, can you reformat it, make it look pretty? Do you have something similar I can use? But if you do that with a publicly available generative AI model, you're literally throwing it into a public forum. It's like walking down the street and handing it over to someone. You can't delete it and you can't remove it. If someone asks for the right question, all that data could be extracted. And you lose confidentiality, but also most people's contracts will say, you will not reveal details of this project. So you're also in breach of your contracts. Clients aren't going to be too pleased if they find out you've released all this confidential information. Could also be quite dangerous. If you're doing a particularly sensitive project and you upload a particular drawing and say, can you fix this part of it? That drawing's there forever. And you often see this in a separate way. When it got very trendy on various social media to create avatars of yourself, and you put out 6 photos and it creates the avatar. But when you read the privacy details, it says we can use your photos for whatever we want, forever, in any way. And you've lost your image, effectively.
And that's why I don't have an AI generated avatar.
Exactly.
Because I saw that. I was like, I don't love that. And I see a lot of people being frustrated about, different avenues on the internet being just scraped to train these models. And folks are like, well, this is my data, but obviously you sign a user agreement to join a forum or anything else. And so they can kind of do whatever they want. But I know other tools are not necessarily getting permission to go and scrape all of that, but just plugging things in blindly, as you just, pointed out, there is risk there. And I don't know if everybody thinks about that, but I couldn't imagine a customer being very excited if they go play a chat GPT and see the drawings popping out of their, skiff or something that's incredibly, secure because you wanted to ask it some random question. And I don't know if most folks recognize that. So I appreciate you pointing it out, because there's so many things we need to consider when we're just floating things out into the internet. I joke with some of my friends in some of these AI tools, like deepfake is such a thing now. And there's most certainly enough video and audio of me out on the internet now from doing Digital Builder that if somebody wanted to be malicious and have me saying terrible things, it wouldn't be very hard to do that. And that's concerning. That's a weird thing to think about, because it's just, people have access to it and they can, go be malicious as they want. So we have to be, thoughtful as we start moving through, all of the different avenues. And I'd like to take a deeper dive on, how we can think through ChatGPT specifically. Are there any other nuances you think that are important for folks to really consider? Because I think that's the most prolific tool out there right now. Everybody's really excited about it. I'll be honest, I've gone in and plugged some things in there and go, hey, what do you think about Digital Builder? Didn't have any opinion, but that's okay. What else should folks think about as they're querying this tool or using other ones that are similar to it?
I think copyright is a big thing. Generative AI models scrape data across the internet or other sources. There's loads of cases at the moment, particularly in the US, where writers say ChatGPT has been fed all their novels and therefore is in breach of copyright because you can produce a novel exactly the same.
Yeah.
You have Mid-Journeys being sued as well for very similar. So I think with if you're going to use AI results, you ask for a particular thing. You get an AI result, you don't know if it's in breach of copyright, breach of trademark. You don't use it in your project. Someone says, hold on, that came from originally from my work. You shouldn't have used it. I'm going to sue you, or they tell the client. And I think that's a very big thing. But also on the flip side, if you feed your matter in and then someone uses it and you say, well, you've breached my copyright. Apart from the reliance, I think the copyright issue is going to be a big thing, particularly because if you don't have enough interaction with the result, there's no copyright attaching at all, because they say, well, the machine did it. You can't claim that it's you own it.
It introduces such a weird gray area, because copyright. I'm not a lawyer. Let's be real here, but it feels like it was more straightforward before we started creating these tools that make things on our behalf from all these different inputs. And it'll be interesting to see how this all shapes up in the coming years, as far as how the laws change or evolve and how we relate to the different tools. I see folks getting frustrated. They go, well, it scanned all of my cartoons and now it's outputting cartoons like mine or novels like mine. And I really do hope that as we continue to hone whatever AI tool we're using, AI shouldn't be writing our poetry for us, at least in my opinion. AI shouldn't be writing our new songs. I really hope AI lets us take and augment and take those tasks that we don't want to do, so we can spend more time on the beach playing music and doing all of these things. And so, this is my idealistic version, of course, and very opposite of the Skynet. But I think we need to be deliberate about how we navigate everything that happens next, because there is so much uncertainty, as you're pointing out here. And I appreciate you, being so on the nose about it, because not everybody wants to talk about it. It's very easy to get tied up in the hype.
I was listening to the Freakonomics podcast, and they had a AI expert on who said, it's been shown if you teach an AI based on AI results, it gets progressively more stupid because it degenerates. All the gray disappears. That's the beauty of humanity.
Yeah.
It just gets very, very precise. So if you keep creating books or a design, say a design for a building based on an AI which was based on another AI design, are they all going to just look the same?
Probably. they might start looking really weird after a while too. So, it's good to, I think, sanity check the results that you get. And I've been amused because I've seen things where like students will use ChatGPT to write papers and then like put some really weird stuff in the middle of it. And it's very clear that they didn't read it before they submitted it. And the professor just circles this and goes like, what is this? Or very obviously, you've used ChatGPT to create this. And I know, there are now tools, AI tools to detect if you've used an AI tool to write the thing. Like, I don't know how meta you can get, but it starts, getting nested like the Russian nesting dolls. But it's important to really consider the implications. And I think people need to be intentional about it. I know I hear folks using it for like toolbox talks and all kinds of other starting points. And I think that's a great way to use it in a more casual way. But also, you just still have to be mindful of what you put into it. And I know a lot of organizations like Autodesk have created their own internal tools. So we have our own Autodesk GPT that is built off of this model that we can use in a way that we feel safe and secure, because it doesn't train on all of these random internet things, and it doesn't take what we put in and put it out into the internet. Not all organizations necessarily have the resourcing to put something like that together. But if it is a tool that you think is going to be beneficial for your organization, I think it's worth exploring to make sure that you do add that layer of security to ensure that your proprietary information and data is at least protected within this model. And if you feel like it's spiraling out of control, you turn it off.
I think one of the problems with that, though, is if you have a closed system or closed model trained on only your data, what if, say, for example, a lot of your projects say only the people working on that project can see this particular data. So you have to exclude all of that. You have to exclude all things which are particularly confidential. Is your data set going to be so small then that your model isn't actually very useful?
Yeah.
Or do you have to have separate models for different clients? And it gets very complicated.
Yeah, you start getting too layered, and how do you apply all the resourcing for that? I think the one that Autodesk is using took the original ChatGPT model, so all of the stuff's there, but it's not scraping the internet for more. But as you pointed out, that still is limiting because it's not adding more, it's not learning beyond whatever we're feeding in. So, there's so many layers of this narrative that I think folks just really need to be thinking through as they make choices on how they use it on their projects or for their personal things or whatever all these people are screaming about in the background. What are some of these steps that AEC firms can take to really minimize the risks that they could undertake? I feel like we've talked about it a little bit here, and I'm not the expert by any means, so I'm speaking off the cuff. But what would you advise teams to do to really make sure they're protecting themselves?
I think start at the beginning. There's always the temptation when it comes to new technology of either saying we're not doing any of it because we don't understand it, or we want all of it and then we'll work out what we want to do with it. And then it just sits there. So it's I would say work out what the technology is, which bits are useful to you. Start with the what is the technology, and then why do you want to use it? So what's the purpose? What's the uses? Okay, this sort of AI model will be useful for us. These are the benefits we want to get out of it. Once you've established that, I think having internal guidance is very important, both the more technical guidance for the technical teams who are running it, but also the simple guidance. The beauty of generative AI is that it's easy. That's why people like it. You don't have to understand computers even. And because it's so instinctive, you need to give an explanation to which is non-technical, not jargon-free. So at Buro Happold, we have a do's and don'ts best practice note, and it's 1 page long. It has 2 things you don't do. It encourages people to experiment, but it makes it here are the 4 corners. Inside that, go and experiment and play, and here are the people you ask if you have questions. So I think those 2 things, work out what you want to do, and then work out how you're going to implement it, and trust your experts. I think with a lot of these things, it's very tempting to either make decisions or enforce decisions without saying to your technical team, what do you think? Let's spend our time going through all the possible options and then make an informed decision. At Buro Happold, we have a AI working group, and I'm on it. We have our head of IT, we have our CTO, all the people who come at it from different parts. and give an opinion, and then you get a whole.
I love that because there's so many different perspectives there as far as what's appropriate, how do we use this. Somebody might have experienced something and go, hey, don't do that because we've learned from our experience. And I love the guidelines that you're putting together too, because it does also, I think, empower somebody who might be a bit hesitant about it, where they go, okay, I'm not sure, even though it's, you write a question and it does something, it plugs it out. Not everybody's comfortable with technology. And so you're empowering them to feel like they have a place to start, which is great. So I'd like to talk a little bit more broadly now. I know you are really interested in technology, not just AI. So I'd like to, pick that part of your brain a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about some of your favorite current industry trends that you're seeing and, share a few predictions for what may happen in the AEC industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
The trends I enjoy seeing is a combination of technologies. So, for example, last week I was in Hong Kong speaking at a blockchain conference, and we were talking about how you can combine blockchain, smart contracts, digital twins, and AI, and you get everything improves as a result, rather than everything sitting in silos. But as part of that, I'm hoping we move away from contracts simply saying, do some BIM. I want Revit. I want a digital twin. And I think we are moving, the trend is for clients to be more informed and say, I want these 5 things, please deliver them to me. And that means clients are going to be happier, but also the consultants, the contractors are going to be able to deliver more accurately. On a broader scale, I'd say the younger generation are more used to sharing information, using technology. They're all tech natives. So it's much easier to adopt things. It's more instinctive. And I think that necessarily improves the output. It improves how we adopt the technology, but how we also interact with it and with each other. I was using computers since I was 4 or 5, but that's quite unusual. Most people came to it when they were teenagers. And so they still, whilst they overly trust technology in some ways, I think in the next 10 years or so, what we'll see is a great wave of much more integrated technology. It's like years ago when we moved from fax machines to email, and there was a lot of I remember there's a lot of kicking and screaming about this. But if you ask someone who's 22, do you want this in printed form? Like, no.
What? Yeah.
Why do I want paper? And I think that means that the adoption rate of technology will speed up.
I love all of that answer, and I think we could talk about that for the next half an hour if we felt so inclined. But if you're listening on the audio version, when May was speaking about the owners and everybody who's building being more prescriptive about what they want, I was furiously nodding my head because as a formal proposal manager or tender manager, I've seen the bad RFP that just says, I want BIM. And it's like, you can go so much deeper here. And this isn't being burdensome for your contractors, unless your contractor just doesn't want to do some of these things. But it gives the bids that you receive, one, everybody's going to be giving you the same thing. And it's easier to evaluate it at that point too, without having to go 16 questions deeper to go, okay, did you think about this? Did you think about this? But the more progressive owners who are thinking about digital twins and how they're going to operate their facilities and thinking about these things before they get to the design phase are in such a great position because they're going to get exactly what they want. And hopefully they can retain that relationship with the contractor after handover because they can help them maintain that digital twin. They can help them work through these documentation and really make that a living, breathing asset for them. And so I just feel that there's so much opportunity for folks to get better at building out their RFPs. And so, obviously I'm biased because I used to be the one that received them all the time, but I do feel encouraged as I see more owners asking questions about this, becoming more informed, and also understanding that, their responsibility with the technologies carries far past the construction phase. And, that's where all the expense of the building is anyways, when they're operating it. So I love your answer there. And, like I said, I'm going to stop now, or we're going to go for the next 25 minutes, but I have one final question for you, and I'm looking forward to your answer here. What is one tool that you'll use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
So it's probably a very boring answer, but I'd say a blank document, because it's literally a blank sheet of paper. You can write all your ideas. The number of times I've been in meetings with engineers and say, can you explain this to me? That like, do you have a piece of paper? Let me draw it for you. Let me do a flow chart. Or you can create a document, create a contract, create a to-do list. Or I'm a big fan of checklists, so people don't forget things, and say, here are the 5 things. If you do nothing else, do these 5 things. And that's often sometimes all people need, just keep to basics.
I love it. And I'm a checklist guy myself. And I like actually paper for my personal checklist. So, stuff that's just life that's not work for some reason. I like writing it down, and I also like crossing it off. Although I do use a digital checklist for my work stuff because it allows me to shift the stack ranking as, dramatic things happen throughout the day. Go, okay, suddenly this is far more important. It's easier to, make those adjustments in a digital environment. And that doesn't happen as often in my personal life. So it works out well. So I love both those answers. And May, again, just thank you so much for joining me on Digital Builder here. It's a real pleasure getting to, hear some of your perspective and knowledge. And for everybody out there listening today, of course, this is Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. We are a video first show, so make sure you find us over on Autodesk Construction Cloud. On the YouTube channel, there are so many backlog episodes. If you want to see what this expo looks like or any of our other prior recordings, you can check it out there. Alternatively, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else you can go find a podcast. So until the next episode, goodbye.